Well, here goes. The story of my life, such as it is. Okay, so I was born out in New York in 1919, which makes me, 70, almost 75 years old. I was born out there in a little farmhouse and lived there till I was about 6 years old. Then we moved into what we used to call the Red Barn on Bangs and Fulton. And we lived in the back of a 5-room house is attached to the store. And we had a grocery store there at this time and a feed store and all that kind of good stuff. And I started to school at Burbank, and I went through the 2nd grade, which is plenty of education for anybody. So my daddy pulled me out of the school, and I was tickled to death to go to work on the farm. So we worked on the farm and worked in the grocery store. And then when I was about 7 or 8 years old, well, Daddy and them taught me how to play poker and 42 and dominoes and all that kind of good stuff. I'd get me a wooden box and sit on it so I could reach the table. So that's where I learned to do all of my gambling. And then when I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old, Daddy taught me how to make what they call homebrew beer at that time. And we would sell it for 25 cents a bottle, because it was against the law at that time to beer was not licensed or whatever at that time. So we did that. And then also we sold whiskey. And at this one time we heard that the police was coming out to raid the place, so we had to get rid of the whiskey. We put bottles underneath the steps and hid it under the bed, and I hid some in the oven. So they came out and they couldn't find it. And so the next morning we got up, and Mother was lighting the oven to make some biscuits and stuff. And when she lit the oven, when it blew up it blew the whiskey up and made such a terrible mess. But whatever, that was the way I started out. So then I started learning how to ride Johnny's bicycle. I didn't have one at this time. And I started wearing all of his blue jeans and shorts and shirts and everything. I hated dresses just like I do now, you know. And he'd get aggravated and upset because every time he went to get something, it wasn't there. So I learned to drive, I guess, when I was, 9 or 10 years old. I put 2 or 3 pillows behind me, and I'd drive that old Model A we had at one time, and then I graduated to, Model T, and then I graduated to Model A. Well, I learned how to drive and enjoyed that and everything. So anyway, Aunt Pat also learned how to drive. But when she first got in the car, well, she went through the storefront, and she didn't try again for a long time. She drives about like then, like she does now, but whatever. So anyway, we worked on the farm for a long time, and then we had we used to have dances out there about once a week in what we call the feed store at that time. And I guess I was about 13 years old. And I liked this Harry Anthony that come down there, so we were going to have a dance, and I needed some shoes. I didn't have any money, so we had a calf out in the backyard, and I took it down the road and sold it to Mrs. Davis for $3 and went and bought me a pair of shoes. I went to the dance and had a ball at our house there, of course, in the feed store. And then Daddy missed the calf, and so he went down the street down Elm Fulton. He found the calf tied in the front yard, and he gave the lady the $3 back and gave me my usual whipping, which I was pretty well used to by that time, but it didn't slow me down any. And I shouldn't be telling you kids this, because then, I expect so much out of you kids being good, well-mannered, and all this kind of stuff, and here I'm telling you what I did. So it's not do as I do as I say. But, so that went on, and so finally when I was about 17 years old, I married a J.B. Perkins. And while we were married, I think at that time, 1937, I went into the service. And J.B. was in the service too. He was overseas fighting, and I went into the service here at Oglethorpe, Georgia. And when I went to basic training, it's basic training, I think, for 6 weeks. Well, when I got there, when I got to the camp, I knew that this was a big mistake. I did not want to go to this training and to this army, but I was already in, so that was it. So I took it for about 6 weeks, and no, about 4 weeks. I had 2 more weeks to go, and I thought, I don't like this thing. I'm going to get out of here. So the only way you can get out is what they call a Section 8 or hurt yourself or whatever. So I was upstairs on the 2nd floor of the barracks, and I thought, well, I'll take care of this. I'll get out of here. So I jump out of the 2-story building, and I fell, and I didn't hurt a thing. Nothing. Zip. So I didn't get to come home. So I stuck it out, and it got better as it went along, and I took my training there, and then I went in to repair maintenance on the big trucks and what we call the weapons carrier that go on whatever, I can't even think of the name of it now, field trips or whatever. And I enjoyed that. Then I met a lot of people that I got along with, and I met a Colonel Colley that Jay's daddy, y'all's daddy knows her very well, and met her. And she helped me through. She was a commanding officer there. And then I would run off and go to town without my uniform, without my cap, or without my tie, and MPs would pick me up and bring us back, and I'd be punished, and I'd have to wash dishes and scrub floors and all that kind of good stuff, which was all right. And then whenever we'd get paid once a month, we'd all sit on the front barracks porch, and we'd gamble and shoot dice, and we'd get caught for that, and here we go washing windows and doing pots and pans and all this kind of good stuff too, but whatever. Okay, let's see now. So I was transferred to Wisconsin, and I was a chauffeur for the commanding officer of the post. So I got to drive the car, and I got to take him to church every Sunday, and when he wasn't using the car, I could use it and go downtown. And it was very nice. It turned out to be very good. So finally, we won the war, and I came home, and I went into business with Aunt Pat and Uncle Otto and JB and I over on Airline, close to where I used to have my snow cone place, and a grocery store there. And we stayed in that for a while, and then I sold out my part. We sold out our part to Uncle Otto and them. And then I went to fooling around a little bit, and I went to stock car racing. Powder derbies, I guess what you call them or whatever, where, the women would get in there and you try to knock each other out, and you've got these old beat-up cars and things, and they've got X bars across the inside in case you turn over something, it doesn't hurt you. And I did that for a while, which was a little stupid, but anyway, I thought it was very, very exciting at that time. And then went into the restaurant business for a while over Collinsworth. And then I forget what all I did. I know I've had a grocery store and a cafe and the saloon and the nursery on 20th Street and the snow cone place, and I worked at wine gardens for a long time, for about 13 years, I guess. I was a union steward at that time, and I enjoyed that. I was between the people, I was representing the people against the union, and Big Shot Parker, I thought I was really okay. But that worked out pretty good too. I enjoyed that. And then, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, because this will not be years right on down. It's going to be jumping around. But your daddy said to go ahead and do it and whatever. So I forgot to tell you that before I went into the service, I worked out at what they call a Dixon gun plant. And I worked on an overhead crane that was on rails. And I had 4 black guys underneath. And I would pick up these gun barrels, these large gun barrels, and set them down to where they wanted them. Then they'd break them loose, and then I'd go get some more up and down those 2 rails above the head. And I did that for a long time, made pretty good money. But what was so funny about it one time, when I was doing this, they caught one of the guy's gloves come off of his hand, and I thought that I had caught his hand and pulled it off. You talk about scared. But anyway, it worked out all right. And I worked on that for a while. And then I was also the first lady in Houston to ever have a bread route. I had a bread route from Jensen Drive almost all the way around Aldine and all up in that part. I had 72 stops at that time. And I would leave bread at these and buns at these cafes and restaurants and stores and so forth and so on. And I enjoyed that for a while. We'd get up and go down and load our truck about 5 o'clock, and sometime we'd get in 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I delivered sandwiches for Pizzatola's sandwich company down Main Street. We would have these ready-made sandwiches. You've seen them, these pies and this stuff that's all wrapped, you know. And at that time, Main Street was very, very busy in Houston. We didn't have these malls. We didn't have all these side places. So I'd go down Main Street, make both sides, and I would leave homemade the sandwiches and everything there. They used to have, when you'd walk into a bank or you'd walk into some store or something, you could always stop and get a cup of coffee or a Coke and a sandwich. You didn't have to look for a restaurant or anything. So I did that also for a long time, and I enjoyed that. Then I worked out at Nabisco Bread Company out on Holcomb and Alameda, and I was boxing saltine crackers. You had to wrap your hands in some kind of a cloth, because if you didn't, the salt and stuff would tear up your hands. And I did that for a while, and that was pretty hard and pretty rough, so I quit that. And you talk about rough, I went over to American Can Company and got a job over there, and I worked 1 day. And I said, you can have it. That was too much for me. I could not handle that. So then I worked at Western Electric on navigation and Lockwood, repairing telephones. These pay phones, you know, that they have these coin change things, they go through there. Well, I worked there for a long time and made pretty good money there and enjoyed that. And then after a while, I quit that. Well, let me go back here now. I divorced J.B. in 1949. And then I stayed single up until 43 when I met your grandfather. I was working out at Western Electric this time, but at night I was working at a Shepherd Drive-In Theater on Shepherd Drive. I was the manager of the concession stand. So I'd go out there in the evening and on Saturdays and Sundays and work. So I never got to see anybody that left buns or bread or anything or soda water or anything. So I'd have to call them if I was short or needed anything. So one day when I was at work at Western Electric, I called and I said I want to talk to the man that leaves the buns there, that he hasn't been leaving me enough and I'm running short of hot dog buns. So they said they'd take care of it. So I went out there one Saturday with Ollie and a couple of other people that was working there, and I had my hair up in pin curls at that time, bobby pins, and I'm there painting the inside of the store. We weren't open till that evening. So I'm doing that, and somebody walks in and says, I've got your buns for you, lady. I said, okay, and then I started raising all kind of cane and saying, well, you know, why don't you leave enough? I can't sell them. I'd rather turn them back into you, but leave me enough. So it surprised me so bad, I didn't turn around to see who I was talking to. When this guy says, well, look, why don't we go have a beer and talk about it? Well, I turned around, and this would surprise you very much, because your grandfather was very, very nice and very bashful, I thought. Anyway, I turned around and I saw him, and I thought, well, hey, this is not a bad idea. So we go down and we have a beer and we talk and so forth and so on. So then we got that straightened out, and he started coming back out there to see the movies. He'd come back every night, see the same old stupid movie over and over and over again. So finally we got together and we started going out together and we started dating. And then we had got into the part where we was going to get married. And I told him at this time, I said, look, I said, I have been married before for 11 years. I said, I'm divorced. I'm a Catholic and you're a Baptist. And I said, you better think about this for your family. And I'm also older than you. I don't remember whether I'm 8 or 9 years old or whatever. He says that doesn't make any difference. Well, so we, excuse me, so we married, and I knew that I wanted 2 sons. Anyway, that's what I had, 2 lovely, great sons. Yeah, and so at that time we went out to Glen Burnie and bought a house and lived out there for about a year, because Grandma took care of your daddy for a while, and she got sick, so I had to move back into town over on Darrell Street. And then then we had Johnny, and that made it complete. In the meantime, your grandfather was still in the service, and when he got out, he went to work for the telephone company. He did all of the installation and all of the switchboards and everything in these big hospitals and things like that. He had a very good job. He liked it very, very much. And then when Johnny loved to go up to the country and fish and hunt and everything with his daddy. And Jake never did like anything like that. He never went for sports too much and never did like to go up to the country very much or anything. But anyway, it worked out, real well. So they used to go up there to Grandpa and Grandma Parker and maybe stay for 2 or 3 days. Lots of times I didn't want them to go because I missed them, or I thought maybe they weren't being taken care of. You know how that goes with a mother. But anyway, and then I forgot to tell you about the part where JB and I each had a 1200, whatever you call it, Harley Davidsons. Harley Davidsons and the Indian motorcycles were the only ones out at this time. Never heard of all of these other brands. Anyway, we rode that. I had one and he had one, and sometime I'd go with him and he'd be drunk. Fact is, the reason I divorced JB is because he did drink a lot. And he was a good guy and a hard worker and all this kind of stuff until he would get drunk. Then he would, you just couldn't get along with him. And the funny part I want to tell you about is he always got along good with my family. We got along together real well, except when he would get drunk. And Uncle Johnny said something to him. Uncle Johnny, Ozane's my brother. Okay, we got that straight. And it made JB mad, and JB always played a guitar, and he was playing it at that time and singing. And he got angry with Uncle Johnny and wrapped the guitar around his neck. And I mean, it looked like a necktie. Let me tell you another little fun thing here. At the time, it wasn't very funny, and I don't even know if I can put it down on this tape and make it sound like it was. But anyway, we used, as I said, we had a farm. And I was bringing one of the mules home. And, instead of holding a rope on each side behind him to follow him home, I tied it together and put it around my waist so I wouldn't have to hold it. I'd just walk along behind him. Well, all of a sudden a car came by there on Fulton and scared him, and he took off running, and I had to keep running with him because this was around my waist. And I go by the store there where we were living, and my mom and it was sitting out there, and me hollered to stop, hollering at the mule to stop, stop, stop. And as I go by, she just waves at me, like she thinks there's nothing wrong with the situation. So that was something else. But anyway, I guess you'd have to see that to appreciate it. I don't know whether your dad wants me to tell you all of this stuff on here or what. But, you know, I don't think that he really intends for me to put down all this stupid stuff that I went through, like when I would get, Daddy would get upset with me and I'd do something wrong, which was all the time because I was just hard-headed and I'd do what I wanted to do, and then I'd get caught and I'd pay for it. But we had a chicken house out in the backyard. And, you know, when Daddy would punish me, he'd put me out there with the chickens and put a lock on the door, and I'd stay out there maybe for a day or two or whatever. And then we also had a dog tied to our telephone post in the backyard. And I'd do something, and he'd take the dog, turn the dog loose, put the dog collar around my ankle, and I'd stay out there for a while. So I was punished quite a bit, but I guess I had it coming. I don't know, but I think at this time, now that's an awful way to punish somebody. But I just forgot to tell you this, and here I go again, backing up and jumping around, but that's okay. I had to be the ugliest little girl you've ever seen in your life. When I was real small, Grandma would make me wear dresses, although I hated them. I had long stockings up to my knees. My hair was in bangs, cut straight around the back, and honey, I was ugly. And my sister was so pretty from the time that I can ever remember, and always liked to dress up in these little frilly dresses, and everybody'd say how pretty she was. She and I'd be walking down the street, each one of us holding our mother's hand, and people would, you know, that we knew would stop and talk to Mother and say, "Isn't she beautiful? Isn't she pretty?" And I'm standing there thinking, okay, so I'm ugly, so just don't say anything. Of course, I haven't changed much since then either, but I think I've done it. After your grandfather died in '71, I waited about a year, and then I bought a beauty shop out there at Northline Mall, Babe Parker's House of Beauty. And I had started out with 3 girls, Shirley and Ann, and I believe Nancy, I'm not sure. But anyway, and then it built up, and our business was so good. When we first started, you'd have to take a ticket, like when you go into someplace and you pull a ticket and they'll call your number next. Well, that's the way our business used to be. Then I got it built up, I think, I don't know how many operators I had, 8 or 10. Then I had a shampoo girl and I had a manicure girl. And Aunt Pat used to work for me as my receptionist. So then I became ill, and your daddy helped out there, and I don't even remember how many we had at that time. But I stayed there until, I think, 80. I'm not even sure whether I've got this on the record or not. But anyway, and then I sold that. And like I said, we went over and got the place on 20th. And then I went to work at Joe Canino's Produce, and I'd go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning and just work till 10, just 4 hours a day. And stayed there for a while. Then my mother got sick, and we had to put her in the hospital, and I stayed home with her at that time. And I don't know whether I've ever mentioned this or not, but my mother, the day I got married in 1937 to J.B., she moved in with J.B. and I, and she lived with J.B. and I, and then when we were divorced, she lived with me. And then when we married, your grandfather and I married, I explained to him that Mother would have to live with us as much as she wanted to, or whatever she wanted to do. Well, she did. So Grandma Canino lived with me for 45 years until she got sick, and your daddy took her over to Aunt Pat's, and she took care of her over there until she passed away. I forgot to put down that I worked at Williams Laundry. It was located there on North Main and the freeway, where I think it's Wendy's. I'm not sure. But anyway, I worked there for 15 cents an hour, and I have the scars on my arm to prove it. I did a lot of ironing and stuff like that, and it was very hard and it was very hot. But at that time, you know, 15 cents an hour went a long way. And I was trying to think about what else I used to do, but that's not important now anyway. We've covered enough of that. But what I wanted to tell you about Uncle Jake and Uncle Johnny went through Christ the King School. Well, Patricia Ann came down here from California at that time, and she was the principal there when they were in the 7th grade, and your dad and Uncle Johnny was in the 3rd grade, I believe. And I went down there to pick up the report cards, and I went down there in slacks, as I always did, and I wore every place. And when I went into the office to get the report cards from the teachers, they wouldn't give it to me, and I didn't know why. These were all nuns at this time. And they sent me to the principal's office, which was Patricia Ann, and I went in there and I said, I'm here to pick up the boys' report card. And she says, well, Mrs. Parker, you can't pick them up in slacks. You have to wear a dress. I said, well, I don't know why. I said, you have people over there working in the cafeteria that's wearing slacks. And I said, I've never worn anything but slacks up here any time I've ever been here with the other principals and so forth and so on. So she refused to give me the report cards, and it made me very, very angry. So I pulled out Jake and put him over at, I believe it was Hogg, when he was in the 7th grade. I pulled out Uncle Johnny and put him at the Browning School, and I think he was in the 3rd grade, and I kept him there for a while, and I think it really did hurt your father and them, because they already had gone through this 7th grade stuff, because of Christ the King was, the Catholic schools were ahead of the public schools at that time. So they were very unhappy, and I finally went back down, and I went and asked Patricia Ann if they could come back into school, which took a lot for me to do this, but my boys were so unhappy where they were, and so they went back, and for a while I continued to go down there in my slacks and things. The first thing you know, everybody was wearing slacks or blue jeans or whatever. So they changed their rules. And there was no more problem there. Then I got to know Patricia Ann pretty well, and she got to know Dad and Grandma and the whole bunch, and we became very, very good friends. And they were in long habits at this time, but then that changed also, and they could wear clothes that didn't have to wear the veil and didn't have to wear the habit and all that kind of good stuff. So then they could start wearing whatever they wanted to. So I took her over to Kaplan's one time and bought her first pair of slacks. And she loved them. She's been wearing slacks almost all the time now. Even now, they wear shorts when they're off duty or whatever. So that was changed, and she's been my friend for many, many, many years. And I love her very, very much. I feel like she's one of the family, because she helped me through Daddy's death. She helped me advice on the boys that I needed, and she helped me when Bonnie died, who I loved very much, as if she was a sister, probably even closer than a sister. And Bonnie was very, very good to the boys after their father died. I met her after they lost their father, I think in '72. And my sons really seemed to like Bonnie. She was good to them. She was very smart, intelligent, and kind. And now that I'm on that subject about Bonnie, I miss her very much. I miss her a lot. We used to do things together. We were together a lot. She was a great person, and she died of cancer, I think, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. I don't remember. But that was a great loss to the boys and myself. And then back to the school again. At Christ the King at that time, they didn't have doors on the restrooms. You went in there and you just did your business in front of everybody. And I didn't think that was right. So naturally I raised all kind of Cain, and I talked to Father Roma, and I went out to the mother house and saw the Mother Superior, and raised Cain about them not having doors on the restrooms, even for the girls or the boys, either one. Well, I got that taken care of, and they put doors on there, and I felt real good about this, and so did the other parents. Then we didn't have a stop sign down there on Cavalcade. On Patton and Patton and Northwood at Browning School. So I went down to Browning School and see if we couldn't put a stop sign there. and I couldn't get anything done there, so I went down to the courthouse and talked to them. So if you'll notice, anytime you pass by Northwood and Patton there, you'll see that there's a sign saying there's school certain hours, slow down, so forth and so on. So I feel like I accomplished something by the bathroom doors and by the sign. And
I'm donating to you.
Well, let me see now what I'm supposed to start on. I guess I'll start where my mother came over here when she was about 5 years old, and she came over here with her mother. Her two brothers, Uncle Charlie and Uncle Frank, came over here from Italy first. They came over here and got jobs and worked a while, and then sent for my Grandma Mazzola and your Grandma Canina. At this time, Mother's daddy had passed away. Anyway, they come over here and settled, and my mother ended up marrying a John Canino that was born and raised here in Houston. And as you know, they had 2 girls and a boy. And my dad's mom and dad, the Caninos, passed away in their 90s. As you know, my mother passed away when she was 87. And Auntie, which was my mother's sister, she passed away in 87. Aunt Jenny passed away at 99. My father passed away at 87. Uncle Charlie and Uncle Frank were all in their 80s. And so you can see that we all have a long life. My mother's mother, Grandma Mazzola, I think she died when she was about 90-something, but she came over here pretty young because Mother was just about 5 years old, but Grandma Mazzola never learned how to speak English, could not understand English until the day she died. We couldn't carry on the conversation because she never did learn, and it was kind of hard. But she was a great woman, and when she died, she could still read. Before she died, she could still read without any glasses. She had her own teeth, and her hair, believe me, was not as white as mine is at this time. She was a great lady.
I didn't hit an A-side first.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a nice pop. Bobby, you want to have Bobby, honey? And yeah.
Sure did. Okay, everybody put up a
There's mine.
Yeah, 6 low, huh, Bobby?
Mm-hmm. On the first card.
Albert.
50 cents for the straight.
I can't afford it.
Thank you.
Thank you anyway.
That was pretty.
That's the second straight flush, isn't it, that we had to do, or not?
Yeah, I got beat with 4 of a kind with one of them. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, Bert had a straight flush and a perfect look. All in one hand.
Wait, Dad, give that one to him, and you give that second one to him, please. Now,
It doesn't
Wait a
matter.
minute.
They haven't seen them.
That's 4 for
Okay.
5. He's got 5.
Johnny's got 6.
but he gets that one. No, okay.
Yeah, I give him the bottom card, that's for him.
What is
He's
it?
happy, I'm happy.
What is it?
Oh, this is a Dutch uncle.
I don't care.
Dutch uncle?
I didn't see him.
Hey, Rosie, you mean?
I mean Dutch
Wouldn't
uncle.
bother me if you had that.
Same thing, you mean? I know, but
What I always
Aunt
do.
Rosie, some
What I always
Dutch
do.
uncle.
I always call
Play
it
any
Dutch
number of
uncle.
cards?
3 at the top, 3 in the stack, and 1 at the bottom.
Okay.
Any stack.
He turns that on the second.
On the third.
Check.
The third.
Okay, here comes. All right, look at all those 10s.
Oh, yeah. You first, Henry.
I check.
Check.
Ain't just no kidding.
Quarter. Quarter.
Good bet.
I mean,
Okay.
I got peach ice cream in there if anybody wants any.
8-4 deuce.
Then the powder, that's freezer powder.
Yeah, I got enough.
Homemade? No, not homemade.
check.
50 cents.
That Heinz,
I call.
blueberry,
Okay.
very not homemade.
Here comes the teller. A 6, a 9, and a queen.
Can't use the one down there, remember?
One at the bottom.
There's
Make a
nine.
straight flush.
There's nine.
Jack.
50.
I think next time I'll make some ice cream. Jim ain't got
And a
ice
quarter.
cream.
And a quarter.
Okay.
$1.
Is that all of it?
Nope, got one
Two
more.
and a quarter.
Was that raise open?
50 quarter.
Well, that's what I thought.
Ready? Ooh, look at the jacks.
I still wouldn't have had nothing.
Up to Bert.
50 cents.
And 50.
And a quarter.
I'll keep up with it now.
5 more than me.
You're out, John.
$3.
$3.50. No, $3.50.
Damn Pat Jack, get
Wait, you might
that.
have it right now. Just hold on.
Yep, probably true, Don.
Need a quarter.
Probably true.
I got the perfect.
I got a boat, jacks over aces.
I'm not believing
I
that.
got queens over nines.
Tens over kings.
Queens.
See, we had him
Beer on
until
the
they
bottom.
fat Jack
I got
yet.
a nine
Nine up on
up
He
top.
bet, he bet 50 cents when that
Oh, yeah.
guy
Well,
was.
he's
Got a
got
queen.
3 queens over him. He's got,
You got three.
meet me. He's got 3 jacks over aces.
Me and him had
I
just
got 6 low.
You're
That's
not.
not, she's got the wheel.
I got the real ace.
How much is that, Ann?
It's 1, 2, $3.50.
You called us to fix that.
John, you can't do nothing?
Yeah, I called it off.
Sure, that's what happened.
I knew them Jack.
I will.
Well, he's down.
Okay, here's my other $3.
Late bloomer.
Okay, Albert.
Important thing is that
We had to send for a house until that fat Jack hit.
Hey, Bobby.
a day late and $1 short, right?
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna get
Me and Babe had a 10 full.
see that too?
First
You
one.
got two. $1.
They got good hands out of that one. Put a quarter up, and we'll play a little board sweep.
Well, I was sick when that 9 fell on the top.
Board.
Yeah, I'm gonna put
I had
5 out
3
there,
queens
right?
and a pair of 9s,
When
but I
they're gone,
couldn't.
they're gone.
But then one
That's it.
turned up.
That's it, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I turn one of them out?
No, no, if you want
If you want
No, I don't want to.
$1.
This is sweep? This is board sweep, yeah.
Out.
Give me these cards.
Oh, you teeth. Out.
Well,
I'm gonna get out. I can make that how that is.
several ways to hit it here.
A deuce.
Quarter.
I got several ways to miss it.
It's not very
A
optimistic.
9.
One.
And a quarter. Let's make some money, big money out of it.
Yeah, get with them,
And
John.
a quarter.
I
You
mean,
can just sit there all evening.
How much is that? $1.50?
All right. Tell me.
$1.50.
sweep. Not quite.
Not quite. Quarter.
And the hell ain't no money.
I'll make it $1.
I made it $1.
Okay, and I'll pull it out.
What's that make it all?
$2.50.
250.
I'm out.
Pair of aces.
I predict 7.
And a quarter.
I'm out.
Now, who, it was just 50,
75
just 75 to me?
I bet 50 and he raised a quarter.
I mean,
I'll make it $1.
It cost me 75, won't it?
Now, it costs you 50 cents. He raised the half quarter and I raised the quarter.
350.
need a 7 o'clock right here.
350, huh?
Golly. You've been to Vegas and you still can't deal.
I couldn't do it there either, believe me.
Rats. Oh, let's see. Who's doing what,
I
Dad?
just bet 50.
God, I'm gonna have some change in a minute. You took that check, didn't you? Oh, you owe me $1. Put on, maybe I left all your pork the other day. That's good, I can use those 4 quarters right now.
It don't make no
I got a
difference.
flush ace queen.
I can give you change for that 20. You want it?
Wait a minute, let me see what I can do with
That's
this.
all once I got that far.
I got the wheel down
Yeah, I'm beat all over.
Wheel. 1, 2,
Okay.
How's you feeling?
She said she...
Johnny, I'm taking mine.
I'm taking mine.
Better get
Now we
well
gotta
for
divide
next
the
week.
rest.
There you go. Here's 1,
Better get well for next week.
This is for you, man.
3. He's got 3 right here.
I got 3.
2, 4.
3, 4. I got 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here's 5.
I got 5. One
I
more.
think you're
Give
gonna
me
have
$1
that
then.
sleep.
Oh, here it is.
It's so old, that
That
night.
makes 5.
Okay.
I never will forget
Oh,
Mark
six.
put Tony to sleep. He was
Six.
like,
And who is high?
I had
He was high. Oh. You was on low too.
Now I have.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted it to sweep because I had 2 pair in my hand. See, I was waiting for a sweep. It might still another 1, but might have.
Everybody sit up.
Give me a little spending money there.
Oh, man.
Did you get some money, brother?
Hold it.
Check.
Not when she comes up, then.
How much she said?
Watch this game.
Oh, gosh, you're scared of me. I don't have a bluff. I'm a bluffer.
1,
Bluffer.
I love a bluff.
3.
Quarter.
I mean,
Check.
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 Quarter.
Oh, wait a minute.
I got a split.
All spades. 4 spades up there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I check.
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 50.
I call. I owe 50 cents.
I am gone. I'm out.
That made me a first place.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I got nothing for low. Well, I got a 4 for low.
I got an ace for long.
How does she get this?
Last card.
She has really.
I got mine, honey.
I got mine. Right there.
Didn't trim her hair in. She said, I got
1, 2.
Again?
175.
She should go to Vegas while her card is
Oh, sorry.
Quit picking on her.
Come back a million.
I'm not picking on her. I'm telling you.
I'd say you're fair.
If while she's lucky, she won't play poker. She will not play
I don't
poker.
have any confidence.
Poker in Vegas is very slow.
Oh, I love it.
Very
I play that $8 limit the last 2 Texas Hold'em.
Yeah, that's why I played
Yeah,
Texas
but-
Did you
Hold'em.
do any good?
I lost in every poker game and every every poker game I got in.
And I usually make my expenses with it.
Did
I
you
can't
play
play
blackjack?
dice.
Yeah, I did, and didn't win very much, but we did win. But I won most of my money on dice. That's what kept me alive.
At the Sahara.
Yeah, that's all over.
I don't know how to shoot dice.
Lately, there haven't been no,
Thank you, babe.
every time you go to a dice game, they get a number, 7
Last time I
out.
played with Bert, he just put up.
If you get up the dice and you've rolled a 7 the first time, is that good?
Oh, yeah.
That's a natural.
That's natural.
That's as good as
But if you get a
straight
point,
flush.
then
How
the
do they
7
keep
comes
track of
later.
who all's... I mean, there's so much betting
There's areas on the board, and where he puts your bet down corresponds
I like
to
to
where
play the
you stand.
field.
See, I've never played.
Yeah, I know how to do
And
it.
they do a very good job. They don't make
I'm sure they
mistakes.
do.
They
don't
got
make
the things.
They got pros doing that.
In other words, you put your money down, they'll tell you if you win or not. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They'll tell you whether you should take odds or whether you shouldn't take odds.
They don't have to cheat.
No, it's with them.
If you play dice the right way, that's one of the best games in Vegas
Yeah,
to
they have to
win
be
on.
hitting, too.
That's right. Oh, yeah. But you have to,
At least you got a better chance there.
you better
Bet
have
'em,
a better
folks.
chance.
2 on the top.
One of them.
I'm checking.
Check.
Check.
I love it. I
Half a
love
dollar.
live poker up there.
All at one
That's
time.
not necessary.
That was
He
required.
thinks he's in Vegas, I think.
I think I'll get out and play this.
Now, wouldn't you have done a $50 on that?
Check.
I believe.
I checked too.
$50.
It's probably worth $1, but mine won't.
Now what's going to happen to me is what happened to you early with the...
I
Check.
had that.
Half a dollar.
I'm gonna stay for the third.
I close.